Hey, if you're somebody that has been struggling with maintaining their blood sugar, trying all the diets to do it, I'm here to tell you, you've been lied to. And you continue to get lied to over and over and over again when it comes to you and increasing your insulin sensitivity, making you less diabetic. And so in this video, I'm hoping that I can explain it to you in a way that's really manageable and give you actionable steps in order for you to hopefully lower your blood sugar, lower the problems you might be faced with having high blood sugar for a long period of time, and actually increasing your insulin sensitivity so that you can get off drugs, medications, these sort of things. Now, full disclosure, I am not a doctor. I'm not claiming to cure anything. This is for educational purposes only. So take all of this I'm about to tell you with a grain of salt. However, I'm hoping that throughout this entire time I can convince you that what I'm actually saying is true and that you can take these steps for yourself under the guise of some people that has your best interest to get the results that you've been trying to get for a long period of time. Now, before I get into all of that, really quickly, my name is Chris. I run an online fitness business called the Trailblazer Fitness Academy, where I help people lose weight and keep it off long term. And don't get it twisted with me wearing my Disney shirt, working on my Disney sleeve, and having a backwards hat with a really cool bald eagle and it says America. But don't get it twisted. I've spent 14 years of my life in this industry and spent over $500,000 in my education, not to mention the countless hours of research, studying, going to seminars, webinars, all these sorts of things, so that I can be the very best fitness coach, body transformation expert that I can, and help thousands of people across the entire world not only lose weight, but keep it off long term. So I might know a thing or two in the subject, okay? And so before we dive into it, because some people, quite honestly, not even be sure what we're talking about, make sure you watch the entire end of this video so that you can get each step hand in hand so you know exactly what to do and how to do it. Okay, so before we get into it, let's dive into what these things are. What is insulin sensitivity and why is it important? So when you eat food, certain foods that contain sugar in them, sugar is a carbohydrate. Carbohydrate is sugar. They are the same thing, okay? So lettuce, guess what? Made of sugar. Sugar, guess what? Made of carbohydrates. All the same. When we eat these things, our body breaks down that carbohydrate or the sugar into usable components for our body. That usable component is typically in the form of glucose. Okay? And so when your body has a massive influx of glucose at one time, that food then goes from your mouth to your stomach, to your small intestine, and into the bloodstream to be used either in your muscle, to be stored in your liver, or to be stored as fat in adipose tissue. At least 90 or 80% of it, I believe. 85% of it is. The rest of it is either broken down in the processing of breaking it down or in the form of poop, okay, because it doesn't get absorbed all the way through. Our body is not 100% efficient, okay? So, if you are insensitive, meaning your body, when it senses sugar in the blood, it does nothing. The degree in which you are insulin insensitive is a degree in which you are diabetic. Diabetic simply means your body, to some extent, does not have the ability to take sugar and bring it somewhere. Okay? Whether it be your body cannot produce enough insulin to take the sugar to where it needs to go, or that your body does not feel the sugar that is actually reaching your bloodstream. Both of which are major problems. Okay? On the first hand, if it doesn't make anything, that's because you're type 1 diabetic. Your body, when it was either born or currently, goes to your pancreas, sees the cells that make insulin, they're called beta cells, and it attacks them, which means you have to inject insulin so that your body can then grab the sugar and bring it to the cell, okay? So you are doing the role of what your beta cells should be doing. Or if you're diabetic, type 2 diabetic, your body just does not produce enough insulin and or doesn't realize how much sugar is in the blood to be able to produce enough insulin. You get the picture, okay? So we don't want that because the more sugar there is in the blood, the thicker our blood is. And I don't know about you if you've ever heard of this thing, but when you have really, really thick blood, that causes a whole slew of problems. In order to move syrup through a pipe, similar to, I don't know, like a plunger pushing liquid through a pipe, it's really challenging when it's really thick. Think of trying to move maple syrup from one end of a pipe to another versus water. Which one's faster? Which one takes more effort? The syrup does, correct? And so because of that, our blood pressure skyrockets. When our blood pressure is really high, a whole lot of problems can happen. Stroke, heart attack, diabetes, or stroke, heart attack, Those are the main ones. Those are the big ones. High blood pressure is a silent killer, causes all sorts of problems, okay? But when there's a lot of blood sugar in it, it causes neuropathy, meaning tingliness in the fingers and toes. You can also have retina problems because of the blood pressure in your eye, so you become blind or could become blind. And the extent, it can go even farther than that if not taken care of. You can start getting your toes and your fingers chopped off, your foot chopped off, because you don't feel it, and therefore there's not enough nutrients that can get to that area. Really bad. And to the extreme examples is when you get into a diabetic coma. There's so much blood sugar in your blood that your body cannot function. Okay, so we do not want this problem. This is something that is very serious that you really need to take care of, and which is why I'm making this video, is because it is absolutely getting taken way out of context, and it's the big people talking about it, and I'm not going to say names, so I'm not going to get in trouble. Okay. But the big people talking about it right now are very misleading, and they're being very, I don't know if it's, I'm not gonna, what's the term? I'm not gonna give somebody, I'm not gonna say the fancy term, but it's like giving, I'm not gonna assign motive where negligence could be, okay? So they're at best being negligent, at worst having a problem with helping people, and they just, I don't get it, okay? So, and then again, in this video, I'm hoping I can address all the things for you so that you know exactly what to do for yourself. At least can start making strides for yourself. Because I've personally helped, not cured because I ain't a doctor, but I've personally helped tons of people, 30, 40 people that are pre-diabetic, because 67% of people don't even know that they're diabetic, or pre-diabetic, rather. So I've helped them become not pre-diabetic. I've helped people with type 2 diabetes, which is an autoimmune disease, not show any symptoms of it. Therefore, technically being in remission of diabetes. I can't tell you how many. It's been too many, okay? So the steps I'm about to teach you is what I use for my people, not because I'm curing the problem, but because if they have it, it just so happens that the process that I use helps that, okay? So without further ado, let me go ahead and share my screen and make sure we can go over each of these things piece by piece. So first thing that measures diabetes is called your A1C, okay? The A1C is a 90-day average of what your blood sugar is. This is the most common measurement to assess if you are diabetic or not. The second one is what's called a fasted glucose test. Okay? And so where oftentimes people that are in this sort of curing the problem industry do, or what they struggle with, or what they're doing, is they will have their people, we'll call them patients because they're doctors that do these things, they'll have their patients eat extremely low carbohydrates, okay? And so when you do that, you can see that let me get my highlighter here, and I gotta turn on I wasn't gonna do anything, because I don't wanna mess this up, okay? They eat very little carbohydrates, so this green here is the carbohydrate amount that they're consuming, not a lot. And so their blood sugar stays within normal range. Therefore, because their blood sugar does not change, there is zero need for insulin. Make sense? Because your insulin will only secrete when your blood sugar reaches outside of normal range. Normal range is between 60 and 110 millimoles per deciliter. Okay? Don't worry about the numbers, there's just a range. Okay? So, because number's really low, guess what? Blood sugar does nothing, or the insulin does nothing. It just chills at the bottom. Makes sense? And so they'll do this for 90 days or 180 days or 160 days or whatever. They'll go in having a high A1C, meaning that number's above 6, between 6 and 7. It means that you are pre-diabetic. 7 and above means you are full-blown type 2 diabetic. And you would know if you're type 1 diabetic because you've been that way the majority of your life, if not your entire life. Okay? So, when it gets below that, A1C's below that, then the doctor goes, oh my gosh, you're no longer diabetic. Except here's the problem, is that what happened is that we just artificially showed that you did not have high blood sugar because you didn't eat anything that would show that. That's like me saying, hey guys, I could bench press 300 pounds. You're like, holy crap, show me. And I show you a picture back in 1997, even though I was only 6 at that time, whatever, okay? But I would show you a picture and go, look, I did it. And you're like, but you said you can do it. I said, yeah, but I did it before. You see how it just doesn't quite make sense. You see how when somebody goes, I did this, versus this is where I am today, a little weird. Okay? The same exact thing happens with this, is that you can show artificially that you have low blood sugar because you don't consume any. Therefore, your blood sugar will stay low or within normal range because it has to. Make sense? And the limited amount of stuff you do eat, like lettuce and pickles and carrots maybe, not even carrots. I mean, some people don't even eat carrots. Like that's too much sugar for them, right? A little bit of blueberry, but otherwise eating fats and carbohydrates, those things do not spike your blood sugar because they're not made of sugar. They're made of fats and proteins. If anything, there's a little bit of sugar in the protein from the meat that you ate and the mitochondria in said meat because there's sugar in that cell. Makes sense? But otherwise, not enough to do anything that gets you outside of normal range. Here's what happens though, is that when you eat something, even moderately, that has even a little bit of sugar in it. Let's say it's rice, or a piece of toast, or an apple, okay? What happens for most people is, I'll show you with this pen what happens for most people in a bread. What happens is your blood sugar will spike a little bit, and then it goes back down. Because it will, because there's sugar in an apple. Is that a bad thing? No. No. Your body needs sugar to run. So why would you eliminate something that it uses for fuel? It's crazy. The problem happens when you are somebody that has something that's really high, like this shows in blue here. Let's say to get to becoming insulin dependent or diabetic, what happens is you eat stuff that's really, really high in sugar for a really, really long time. And what happens is the blue here shows that you don't, normal range, you eat something. Let's say ice cream, okay? Goes really high. And then, because it goes really, really high, our body tries to meet the demand before it gets to its peak. So it does this in many ways. I'll give you one example and then we'll go back to this, is that when you start running, it's really, really hard to start running in the beginning. Why is that? Because you're going at this pace, but your body's like, what if you go faster than that? And I need to be ready for you to go faster than that. So I'm gonna jack your heart rate up really, really high. And then once we get you to mellow out, then I'll drop it down to suit the level in which you're at. It's also called a runner's high. Okay, which is why runners who run long distance or a marathon, they say one of the hardest miles is the first one because your body's trying to adapt right away. This is why training's important, and not going super duper fast right out the gate is really important because if you do, your heart rate's going to skyrocket. Like if you try to do 50 jumping jacks as fast as you can right now versus 50 nice and slow, you're going to notice your heart rate goes way, way fast, really, really hard, because your body just goes from 0 to 100. Make sense? So our body does the same thing with insulin, is that when it's a really high, fast spike, your body tries to beat the demand. Not beat with a B, the demand. And when it does that, it often, almost always, when it's really high, has your blood sugar go really, really low. Because let's say you give it, I'm just throwing numbers out here, 50 grams of sugar, but it's all high glycemic index carbohydrates like ice cream or cookies or cake or something, right? And it's in one sitting really fast, so your body sends out 100 units worth of insulin. So it takes that 50 and then it lowers your blood sugar even lower than that. That's the crash that you experience after eating something with a ton of sugar in it. Then what happens? Our body wants to secrete sugar. And it gets that from our liver, it gets that from our muscle cells, and then this is what causes tiredness. So you get a crash and then tired because all the sugar that you would use for energy or fight or flight is now gone. And when you consistently have a stress state or you try to exercise when you've already secreted all your sugar after having a really high glycemic index carbohydrate response, it's going to be really tough, okay? And you do that once, not a big deal. 2, not a big deal. But 3 times, 5 times, 1,000 times throughout your lifetime without taking care of it and exercising, you're going to have big time problems. This is where people experience tons and tons of problems with diabetes, okay? So, one time, not a big deal. And then what inevitably happens is over time, because your insulin's so insensitive, okay, you'll eat something, purple's new, and your blood sugar stays high for a really, change is still blue, for a really long time. And guess what diabetes does? Diabetes makes your insulin like this. And that's where you start having really bad problems, okay? So I'm making sure to share this with you again, not because I'm going to be mean to other people saying things. It's just that if you don't do this the right way, this is going to happen. If you do it the way that some of these people are teaching, like don't eat a lot of carbohydrates, even tomatoes are bad for you. Oh my gosh, you have a carrot, God forbid, a banana, oh my gosh, it's the worst thing ever. It's going to damage your entire body. You know what's going to damage your entire body is being insulin insensitive, okay? Being extremely diabetic. And when you eat something even as simple as a tomato, this is what happens to some people. I know because there was a lady I was working with who was caught into this brainwashing of this certain person's methodology that's very well known. I'm not going to say names because I don't want to get in trouble, okay? And I'm not probably big enough to get in trouble anyway, but it doesn't matter. So she got stuck in it so much that she was convinced that tomatoes were terrible for you. Oh my gosh. God forbid you eat a tomato, okay? Like you're going to be fine. Imagine like real life when you actually eat something like, oh, I don't know, a piece of bread. You know, it's not going to be that big of a deal. But she was so insulin insensitive that a tomato had her blood sugar skyrocket and stay there for a really, really long time. Not good. But her A1C was down. Problem, because it's looking like that, but it's actually not that. So, what do we do? Now that we know that eating that way does nothing. Okay, first and foremost, this is one way. There's 3 main ways. First one is eating healthy. Okay, avoiding high glycemic index carbohydrates, especially if you are insulin dependent, meaning you have to inject insulin in order for your body to get insulin in your system. Okay. Now, is everybody going to get cured? No, not everybody. Is this going to be helpful for everybody? Yes. But will every single person that's watching this that has diabetes or something absolutely get off of it? No. But you know what it's going to do at the very least is increase your livelihood. You're going to have a way better chance of not having any other problems that you have other than a little bit of diabetes. Okay? But if you don't do something about it, here's what I know is going to happen. Is you're going to start losing toes and fingers and not be able to walk and not be able to see. And then your life's going to end with you not walking, seeing, and eventually dying of a lackluster lifestyle. So do this, okay? So eating healthier, number 1. If you don't know what that looks like, watch some of my videos. I got tons of them, okay? I even got like a 30-pound fat loss blueprint I can send you. All you got to do is just comment down below and I'll get it to you, okay? Hit me up, okay? There's plenty of methods. I got all my links down below. I'd love to be able to help you out, okay? Second thing is what I'm about to tell you. Third thing is a big one, is lose some weight, okay? We know when you're gaining fat, your insulin is not running optimally, okay, when you're building fat. So losing some weight will help. So most people that are diabetic have a weight problem. So if you can lose some fat, you will become less insulin insensitive. You'll become less diabetic, okay? So here's what we can do though right away that's been shown to have a 40% increase and have that increase stay for at least 2 hours afterwards. And that is high intensity interval training. Here's how it works, okay? You have, again, I'm using graphs a ton, okay? But you see you got this line here. Let me use a color I haven't used. That's hard to see. 1 second. Let's use purple, okay? So you got the graph here. This is time, and this is intensity, okay? This line here represents what's called your lactate threshold. Lactate threshold means below that line, you can use fat as energy because you can breathe and be able to metabolize the energy source of fat with oxygen, okay? So be able to keep up with your exercise demand. So if you're running long distance, let's say, even at this speed, I can do this for an hour, just like this. You could too, just like this, because we're using like fat is energy, and we have tons of fat. Somebody at 10% body fat can run from Arizona, where I live, to Disneyland without stopping. They'd probably die of heart attack or heat exhaustion or sleep deprivation first, but you have enough energy to be able to go that distance. It's pretty cool, okay? But once you go faster than that, once your intensity reaches higher than that, you have to then, or your body then, cannot intake enough oxygen in order for you to use fat as energy. And it starts using carbohydrates. Kind of important, especially when you got a whole bunch in your bloodstream because you are insulin insensitive. So what does it do? Is it makes your insulin go, hey yo, we're exercising at a high rate. We need this carbohydrates, this sugar in our blood cells right now, or in our bloodstream. We need it there right now in our muscles. If we don't, we're going to pass out. So go now. And so what it does, what we're going to do is we're going to stay above above your lactate threshold for about 20 seconds. And then you rest for 10. During this resting period, what happens is your body then takes the lactate, puts it back into the little cycle it has. It's going to make it into pyruvate to use the oxygen as energy for a little bit. Okay, get some blood sugar ready to rock, because it's going to get it out of our glycogen stores, get it out of our liver, get it out of our muscles that's sitting there as glycogen to use as glucose, which is what we're going to need. Glycogen, stored sugar, same thing. Okay, so then we do it again. Oh snap. We do this over and over and over and over and over again. And over time, your body is forced to be better at using sugar as energy and becoming more insulin sensitive. Now, of course, eating better for sure absolutely helps. It's also going to help in fat loss too, which is really important. Okay, but if you're looking solely for insulin sensitivity help, exercise, specifically high intensity interval training, is the number one way to decrease your diabetes problem. And it's not because I'm saying it. It's not because I'm claiming to cure anything. That's what science says, not what Chris says. Just so we're crystal. Okay. Now, before we get into it and before I finish it out, I know this question, or this is already in your head, of what does high intensity mean? Because Chris, you look like a fairly fit dude. I'm not the fittest, I get it. But you look fairly fit, I am not fit. Your high intensity versus my high intensity is vastly different. And that, my friend, you'd be so right on. The good news is that your high intensity is your high intensity. If that means standing and doing this for 20 seconds gets you going, and going like this, resting for 10, gets you there, it's perfect. For me, maybe it's doing burpees and then resting, or burpees and then doing mountain climbers or something. I don't know. But your high intensity is your high intensity. So what I've done, if you want, is I put together 15 workouts that you can do in 15 minutes or less. So you get an idea of some stuff you can do. It's free. Okay. So if you want it, all you gotta do is comment me down below. I'll reach out to you, or reach out to me in one of these socials. I got TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. I got the whole gamut. I'm everywhere. Okay. So you can go on there and get it. Okay. I am eventually, maybe by the time you see this, I'll have it on my website too. If I do, I'll put the link down below for you so you can get the workouts there as well. Okay. But those things are going to help you so much more than just nutrition. And what it inevitably will do is it actually ends up making you worse off, because you actually haven't tested your body's ability to make insulin. Therefore, when you have a little bit, it stays in there for a really long time. Problem. With that being said, that's all I got, guys. Have a great day. Kick some butt, take some names. If you're somebody who is trying to do this on your own and would rather have me coach you personally to get you from where you are today to where you want to go, that first link down below will get you there. It's called a breakthrough call. We're going to go over, see what you're struggling with, see what we need to do to help you out. Okay, if that's not the right move, we got a bunch of other stuff, cool things to get going. So worst case is when we hop on a call is that I'll point you in the right direction and you'll get tons of value, and we'll discover a lot of things about you that you might not even realize are the things that have been holding you back. Okay, you get a ton of clarity and I'll stay in the right direction. Worst case and best case is we get you on the wall just like all these people, crushing it, losing weight, and keeping it off forever. That's it for me. Have a great day, kick some butt, take some names, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.